Perfect. So we're 5 minutes in, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And if anyone else joins, then they can just kind of listen in. So firstly, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it. Before we get started, I want to give a brief overview of the way that we would like this to run. So basically, I have a series of questions that I'm going to ask. They'll start and spark our discussions for the day. And since it is International Women's Day, we would love to hear from all of our women minders and our special guest, Dr. Amanda, who is here. And we want to give them the floor to talk and discuss each question, share their experiences, and no pressure to those who aren't comfortable talking, but we would love to hear from everyone if possible. We do have about an hour, and we are recording this also. Just want to reiterate that again. So I'll be sending the link out to this for those that can't join later on today. So also, if there are any questions throughout this, please add them in the chat and I will monitor the chat and ask those questions as they come up. Still just want to make sure that we're giving the women minders and Dr. Amanda time to discuss everything. And then lastly, before we get into the discussion, I would like Dr. Amanda, I want to give her the opportunity to introduce herself. And then we will go ahead and jump into it. So sorry to kind of throw you in there like that, Dr. Amanda, but I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself. So the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'm Dr. Amanda. I'm a developer relations engineer. So that means I'm the bridge between developers and our product, which is Deep Haven Data Labs. We're a really fast database company that works with batch and real-time data. I've been there for about a year so far. And there's lots of other answers I'll do as we get into the discussions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So the first question to kind of spark this discussion is going to be, what made you get into tech, or what interested you most to join tech? And anyone can start this off. I'll kind of let people talk as they go. If not, I will start picking people to volunteer. Okay, I'll kick it off.
Okay, I'll volunteer. I'll go ahead and volunteer.
Okay, go ahead, Georgia.
Okay. I got into tech because of my dad. He was, back in the day, they were known as computer programmers. And so I was a single mom, and I was going back to school, and I tried working as a job just at a manufacturing plant and wasn't making a lot of money. So he encouraged me to go back to school. So I went to school and studied computer science. And I've been in there since.
Did anyone else start off like knowing that they wanted to be in tech? Because for me, I originally didn't want to be in tech. I had no plans on going into tech. I originally was a clinical laboratory science major, and I wanted to do forensics. And specifically, I wanted to do gun ballistics because my dad he's a retired police officer. So I was always really interested in that. I don't know why. And plus I watched like the first 48, all the crime shows. So I originally wanted to do gun ballistics. Then I realized I was not good at science at all. Failed biology the first year. It was just not, it wasn't my thing. So then I went into art because I wanted to do graphic design, and I loved the creative aspect of it. And then everybody's like, oh, you're not going to get a job with the art major. So I was like, well, I'll go into tech because I can still do graphic design. And then they cut the graphic design program at my school. So I went into computer science. So I originally didn't want to be in tech, and I had no plans on being in tech. I just kind of happened to find my way in there. Does anybody else have a situation like that with how you got into tech?
I definitely would say I'm the same, similar to you, Dion. I mean, I studied international education and for years was working in study abroad program management, and then COVID hit and that industry totally died, and I had to totally reframe what I was doing. And I think I was interested in tech because also kind of like what you touched on, Dion, a lot of other industries like lack funding, or there's just kind of instability in what their future might be. I always thought international education would be this huge industry, and then it was wiped out by a pandemic, which like who could have guessed? And I think tech just has a lot of stability in terms of the future and the direction in which it will grow. So that was something that really brought me into it.
No, definitely.
My background is actually in astronomy. So kind of like you, I went into the sciences. And I always wanted to go into something beyond just, astronomy, because that's just so far away and not really here and now. And I was actually reading the newspaper, and there was a computer programming project where they organized a better placement for Syrian refugees so that they could actually make an income. And I was like, wow, computer science is like impacting people's lives here now so they can actually live. I want to be part of that change. And so I went back and got my degree in technology.
No, I love that. I didn't realize also at the time when I was in school how big tech was and like how much it was like kind of all across the board. So like pretty much anything that you do, there is some form of tech in it. And I didn't realize that one growing up or even when I was in school. So it was just like, huh. Okay, so once I finally got into it, they're like, oh, well, you can go to all these different avenues. And I was just like, okay, so it was a little overwhelming when I got into it because I always had this tunnel vision of, okay, I just want to do something creative. And then I was like, okay, I can do something creative, but then also still help people, or especially with like UI or UX, or and just like you're making sure accessibility, you're making sure that, you know, these sites work for people that have disabilities and things like that. So I was like, okay, I love that aspect of it. So then once I got into it, it was just, it still was so much because there's still so many things that you can do with just UI and UX alone. So it was like, okay, but just having an impact, there's so many different impacts you can have when it comes to tech in different areas that you're in. So I like that you touched on that. Does anybody else, before kind of going into the next, it's not next topic, but question one?
I kind of have the same as you, Dion, and sort of a little bit opposite to, I sort of backed into tech from music and from the arts. And so much so that when I decided to go back to school and get a degree in computer science, I had to start at junior college and pick up all the math that I had skipped all my life. I had none of the required mathematics. And in fact, I didn't think I was good at mathematics, but it turns out I actually love mathematics and calculus and things like that. And so I discovered through my schooling a whole other side to my capabilities and personalities. I always thought, you know, artist, musician, you know, what, I don't do math. And then when I went into tech, when I went in to get my degree, I was really inspired to explore a different side of myself and found out that I really do love mathematics and thinking logically, and that all applies to music as well too. So it all blends very, very well together. But I had to start at basically zero and then work through enough junior college to qualify and then do a 4-year degree, and here I am. So
I think what Susan just said is honestly the key of what we're building, just to bring it to Mindera quickly. It is to bring in the whole person into the company, recognizing that we're not just, and it's the purpose of this roundtable as well, we're not just women and men who work in tech, we're whole people, you know, with completely different backgrounds that come together. And if we can do this one thing really well and bring our whole person to the work as much as possible without making the work overtake other parts of our life, which I think in tech, for me anyway, that's something I saw quite a bit before Mindera, is that all you do is work for a company. And, you know, we know tech companies, there are some that where you even sleep there and you definitely eat there and all that. And it's just something we did not want, because we knew that, you know, for instance, in Susan's case, that these are musicians, these are artists, Dion, like you just said, you know, astronomers, like you said, Dr. Amanda, you know, or we just, yeah. So I think that's a key piece of why, especially talking about women in tech, why there is so much room in technology, not just for women, but since we're talking about women, I'll say that specifically, you can bring your whole self, you can have a family, you can have other interests, and then you can come work in tech, get a great salary. Like we all know, like what Haley said, it is a place where, you know, it's a growing industry, so you can make a good living, and then, yeah, go from there.
So I was curious how many people, you know, maybe backed into tech. I backed into tech. I was supposed to be an Air Force pilot, but they paid me a lot of money to write software, and I was already doing it anyway. And the reason I was doing it is because I saw computers on TV. I saw computers at Radio Shack. I wanted to be where the computers were. how many people were just so drawn to the technology? They just had to be there. They had to be part of it. They became part of it because they were there.
Can't say I was.
But that actually was my experience, and I was very surprised by it, Paul. And it was aviation for me as well, because my degree is a hybrid, aviation and computer science. And because I really, first of all, fell in love with mathematics and then with aviation as a system and flying, then I got, okay, well, everything is computerized in aviation, air traffic management, all that stuff. And it got into, okay, I know I didn't want to be a pilot, but I did want to be involved, especially in, how airplanes move and how, the safety and things like that, and getting people safely to their destinations. That was all computers. And so that's where it was really in service, again, of another interest. I will confess right here, I have never been interested in, Mary's heard me say this many, many times before, in tech for its own sake. For me, it's always got to be in service of something cool. And then it becomes really cool, for me.
I definitely agree with you there. I was never, especially because the way that I came into tech, I was never completely just interested in tech. It was always an underlying reason of why it made it interesting to me. So with me doing front end originally, it was interesting to me because I like to see the website after the fact. That gave me satisfaction. Doing the coding didn't satisfy me. It was seeing it after I finished it and seeing what I made and what I created. So it wasn't, the tech part of it was never just like, oh man, I just want to write code. It was never that. I don't think it will ever be that, but it's like, even now, it's like when I do think about the times like I want to start coding again, I'm just like, do I really want to start coding again? Or is it just, I want to create something, but I can create something doing something else. So I get that part of it, but Paul, I'm sorry, I missed the mark on that one. I don't just not because of the tech.
I've written assembler before, but that I'm not dying to do it again. There's some achievements you're like, that was hard. I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
I got into tech because I wanted an Atari 2600, but my parents bought me a VIC-20 instead. And I was like, what the heck is this? I got this computer, opened it up, and it started talking about the basic language. And so I programmed a 5-question quiz. I was 13, by the way. A 5-question quiz on Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. And that kind of got me started. I started programming games and stuff. But as soon as I got into college, I found out I wasn't really learning computers in college. I'd take a Pascal class and I would learn Pascal in the first couple of weeks. And then just kind of wait for the class to catch up. So I kept switching. I switched over to English. And then in my career, I bounced from coding to freelance writing. But I've never done technical writing because that's, it seems like it'd be a fit, but to me, it's always been kind of boring. I'd like, I've always had most fun in writing when I've done very creative type of stuff, not necessarily fiction, but you can do very creative type of articles. So I blame my parents. It's their fault.
See, I would say for me, Paul, it's exactly the opposite. I grew up without technology where, all of my neighbors and whatnot would have computers and MP3 players and all this fancy toys that they would talk about, and they would talk about their Ataris and programming computers, and I had a typewriter. So not having the technology was one of those things that when I finally got access to it, I was like, ooh, look at these new toys that I could program and explore and do things.
Well, I was a little like that. As soon as I learned BASIC, I was a habitual customer at Radio Shack, and I would just hang out there for hours. And they'd let me because, people would come in looking at these. They didn't know how to sell computers, but here's a little kid, sitting at the computer for hours just doing stuff. That was enough for them. But yeah, it was a long time, and my dad worked a lot overtime just to get my first computer. But after that, that was it. I just kept doing more and, making friends that had stuff, and I just wanted to see more and do more. But I was also like Susan, I was into music. So I was doing electronic music and all of those things. I don't think I would have done one as much without the other. It became a big part of that as well.
I think for me, Paul, I agree with you. It's like I've always been, I think even as a kid, I've always wanted to be in tech, just wasn't sure what in tech. And then I kind of found my path in college, but it goes back to like what Susan and Dion said, is I didn't want to do it to be in tech specifically, but to be of service of something. So for me, it was always, I think, like if anybody asks me what my 10-year goal is to build a system for the refugees, ideally to help them find a safe place in neighboring countries. And that's a long way to go. And there's a lot of research towards it, but that's where I want to be at the end of the day, is helping people, doing social work, and, you know, doing good with tech, kind of being able to kind of help out everybody who doesn't have access to it. You know, it's very easy to have the privilege that I've had and kind of like just be in it for the money, because let's be honest, there's money in tech, but I never actually had that goal of just making money. It was more of what's the best service I could provide. And I've always been interested in charity work and stuff, and I realized assembling both tech and social work was my best way to contribute back to the community.
That's awesome. Okay, so I do want to give anyone else a chance of our female minders who didn't kind of express or why they decided to get into tech, to give them the opportunity to now if they would like, before I move on to our next topic of discussion. Going once, twice? Okay, so kind of going off of why we got into tech. I know some of us are a little bit earlier in our careers, and I know some of us are seasoned professionals, but have you all encountered any roadblocks in your career path, and what were those? And then how were some ways that you overcome them? Specifically in this instance, I would love to hear about some roadblocks you encountered as being a woman in tech.
You know, the one that comes to mind that I've told many people before was when I was pursuing one of my degrees, my research advisor, when she found out that I decided to start a family, she was refusing to be my research advisor anymore. And she said that, you know, in order to go forward in this career, you cannot have a family, so go do something else. And I went and did something else, but in retrospect, I probably should have, you know, fought her on that a little bit more. It seems like sometimes the career woman is almost the hardest person to people that want to have that work-life balance.
Yeah, I'm going back over, so I've been doing tech for a long time. What I've encountered more often is a lot of support from all of my colleagues, no matter their gender or whatever that is. I can't think of a specific instance of in my tech life where I've met any resistance like that. It's more likely at car dealerships and people coming to replace your furnace and you get mansplained. And it's actually always kind of funny when someone tries to do that around computers or something like that. And then I just, you know, kind of have a little bit of a chuckle. But I think in my career, and maybe it's because of how things were changing and how the world is changing. And honestly, shows like, for example, Star Trek, right? Let's take that one as an example because everybody knows it. It's everyone, it's the most qualified person who's in the role, regardless of anything about that person, right? And so I think that had gotten into the consciousness enough that people were at least holding back on if they had opinions or if they wanted to mansplain, for example, they didn't. Now, the women who came before me definitely had stories about that and how, you know, watch out for this person in this meeting, you know, because you might get some of that behavior or whatever. But I don't think I've ever run into it directly where it really impacted me or stopped me from doing from performing on the job, essentially. And that's, I'm really grateful for that. I'm grateful for all the people I've worked with who've facilitated that kind of environment. And of course, at Mindera is, Mindera is just next level in that sense. So I'm so proud to be here and be working with all of these people.
My wife and I worked for the same financial company for a little bit, and I left about a decade before she did. And she started as a writer and then became a web developer and started managing the web development, then founded the PMO. And she was kind of running the PMO, not officially, unofficially. And she's a very no nonsense type of person. Like she really values her time. So when the meeting starts, it's like, okay, the meeting started. Here's our agenda. Let's go through the agenda. Now we're done, and that's the type of person. And if she goes to someone else's meeting and they don't have an agenda, she'll say, well, let's start this meeting. And she'll, she's just got that type of leadership personality. And I had suspected this for a while, but that she wasn't getting promoted officially because of her gender, not anything conscious in the company, just that subconscious bias that people have. And then we heard from a friend that works for the company, that people think you're bossy. And which as soon as I heard it, I was like, dude, if I were doing that, people would say, Dan wants a management job. Dan's got leadership. But we actually heard the bossy term talked about. And I think that kind of spelled the end for her. It kind of like clued her in that I probably cannot progress in this company. Even though she liked it and invested a lot. She switched over to City and she's gotten in a little pocket in City that's got a great culture, and her career's just blossomed from there. And she hasn't hit any roadblocks there, but she definitely had a roadblock at that company. I think if you had told the CEO, he would have been surprised, but I think it's just some of the, I use the term subconscious bias, not unconscious bias, because we don't do it while we're knocked out or sleeping. We do it from our subconscious, but it's a real thing. And it really, her experiencing that and me, talking to her about it really kind of helped me open my eyes to stuff like that as well, where there are keywords that you hear. Abrasive, I was reading an article on where 95% of the times when there's the word abrasive is used, it is towards a female. A female is abrasive, where a man might be point of fact. I told him point of factedly. No, she told abrasively this. And so those type of things matter a lot. And hearing those words, it's certainly affected me a lot and made me open my eyes on it. And every time I hear people talk about unconscious bias or subconscious bias, I always kind of want to clue in on it and listen to it because it's easy to not, if someone doesn't tell you, especially as a man, if somebody doesn't tell you this is a keyword or you don't experience it, see it out there, it's easy to miss. But once you've clued in on it, then all of a sudden you start hearing it in different places.
I think I definitely agree there. I don't think I've necessarily had any roadblocks. I've definitely had challenges, like since I've started in tech. I think I was really grateful because I got a job right out of college from an internship that I did. So I went straight from an internship to getting a full-time position. But once I was a full-time person, I think for me, especially when I was young, I was the only female on my entire floor. And then on top of that, I was the only minority female on my floor. So it just made it a lot harder. But I realized, and it may have just been the company I was at, because I haven't felt it here. I didn't feel it at the company before this, but I think I just felt like I was under a microscope and every little thing was very nitpicky. And even if it could have been absolutely perfect and they would have found something to nitpick on. And I think for me, that kind of, I'll say subconsciously, because sometimes I don't think it does. But I think it messed with my confidence a little bit when it came to me doing my job, because they made me feel like I wasn't doing my job because there was always something, even though when there was really nothing. Or they would question a lot of things, and not in a question manner of asking for clarification or asking to make sure I understand what I'm doing, but questioning me and my decisions and how I'm doing something, even when at a point in time I was the trainer on my team. So it was still like me being questioned because of who I was and not because of what I was capable of doing. So I think in that sense, that's definitely been like I'll say a roadblock in the sense of, because it did kind of mess with me feeling like I wasn't doing my job or I wasn't up to par, or they felt like somebody else could do it better. And when I say somebody else, I definitely mean a man, because I was the only female on the floor. So, and I wasn't the only one that experienced that there. A lot of the people that I came in with my internship, the females especially felt that way, and they felt that they were very micromanaged compared to everyone else, and especially like the seasoned professionals or their male counterparts. So I definitely think for me, that was one of my biggest roadblocks or challenges coming into tech, especially after coming in full time, because it was just poking. And I was just like, okay. And it does after a while just kind of mess with you. So I think that, and then kind of pointing to what Dan was saying of being abrasive for being bossy, I've gotten that a couple of times too, because after the point of me being nitpicked so much and I'm standing up for myself, I'm like, no, this is how it's done. I know my stuff. It became that I was being bossy or rude, or the other word that everybody always calls a female. So I've gotten that too. And it's just like, well, if I stand up for myself, then I'm wrong. But if I allow you to do it, I'm also wrong. So I think that's definitely been one of the biggest challenges that I've had previously before I came to Mindera in my career. That's why I'm actually like really grateful for working here, because I'm able to express myself and say how I feel and know that the people around me trust that what I'm doing is like I'm getting my job done, but I'm also, and I can like bring my ideas to the table, or if I'm like, hey, I think this needs to be changed. So I think that's definitely, especially for a woman in tech, that's important to be able to know your voice is heard, and like you're not second guessed about it. And if there's additional questions, you don't feel that they're questioning your judgment or your decision making. They're just asking questions to either further understand your idea, or because they want to like kind of build upon it. So that's my little 2 cents on that.
I actually have a mixed experience. Like you, Dion, I kind of like got a job right out of college. So I'd say I just started working full time very recently, but I've been very lucky. I work for a fintech startup, and I guess there's two sides to it. Once the kind of like I got a job, joy. Once you get out of that whole phase of like I got a job, I'm here now. You kind of see the ins and outs of how people treat you, specifically being a woman in tech. Just the degrees I did, to give clarity, I was one of 4 women in one of my courses out of 70 people in tech, and that's insane. Being around men who know their stuff, it can be intimidating sometimes. But I guess I rose to the challenge. I was not afraid to ask questions or ask help and grow as I go. And I kind of pull that same attitude towards work as well. I've been very grateful that I've had actually a community of women in our company that actually recently started a group chat, just to kind of fall back for support or for anything, because it gets very lonely being in different teams, being one of the few women, not knowing what's going on. And I've definitely felt like I've been overlooked a couple of times. I know my stuff, but it's a matter of them not kind of wanting to see that I know my stuff, is where I get very like not per se upset, but a bit like, I guess, a bit sad, because if you'd given me the chance, I can prove myself. But I guess after switching teams, I've been given the opportunity to kind of like grow, and I can see that I can definitely see how I've blossomed under the right leader. Per se, he's given me the opportunity to actually upskill in whatever I wanted to do, the freedom to actually speak, and it's more like I have now some fellow women in tech that I can rely on to like need for help, not necessarily in the same team, but who are going through the same thing of having to like work in a team with just a lot of tech guys, who know their stuff, but just to have that sense of belonging. I think I've actually got that opportunity now, and it feels really nice to be appreciated for the work I do. So it's very mixed, you know. Sometimes there are days where people mansplain, and I can only do is smile and be like, I understand what you're saying, but you know, I totally knew that myself. Here's why. Politely, obviously, you know, without sounding rude according to them, or you know, too outspoken, as they say sometimes. But yeah, that's been my experience so far.
Do we have anyone else that wants to kind of jump on this topic before we kind of keep moving? We have about
I would
30.
like to add to that a little bit, because it is really lonely, because you know, at my company we have 50 employees and 3 of them are women, but the other 2 are like the communications director and, you know, not really coders. And so it gets lonely because there's no other women to understand, you know, what you're actually doing. But then there's this part of you that's always like, you know, did they assign me this coding project because they think it's easy and that's all I can handle? Or, you know, like, is it because I'm a woman that they're treating me this way or that way? You know, is that why my work got ripped apart in the code review or whatnot? So that second guessing as well comes in, with the fact that you're just the only woman in the company really that does the coding.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. And as you're both sharing stories, I'm thinking back. So I grew up in a family, I have 5 brothers, right? So I've 5 brothers, so I've always had that sort of input in my life. And then one of my first responsible jobs out of high school, I worked for a construction company, not doing construction, but doing estimation, reading the plans and saying how much things would cost. Fortunately, I had a boss there who was like a really rough and tumble kind of a guy, but he's like, look, you're capable. I'm sending you out there. I'm behind you 100%. If anybody gives you any BS, you send them to me. If you don't think you can handle it, here's how you handle it. So I had that for about 3 or 4 years before I went to school and got into tech. And so I was always the only woman literally on the job site, you know, for the most part, right? And you always got that look like what is happening? You know, who is this person? You know, she's lost, right? But he, you know, my boss taught me kind of how to deal with that, gave me some skills. And then of course I had the sort of training from my brothers growing up. So even though sitting in a room looking around going, wow, there are 13 people in this room and I am the only woman in the room, it goes to a little bit what Rhea was saying, where you kind of have to stand your ground just a little bit. You know, I've had my PRs ignored and you have to go, you know, hey, come on, someone needs to review this PR, please. And you keep raising your hand and things like that. But that disappeared pretty quickly once I was able to kind of apply those skills I had learned in other places to hold my kind of space in the room respectfully, respecting myself, and also respecting my colleagues and things like that. And I've been fortunate, but even being fortunate, you still do have to create that space and hold it and be like, you know, I know what I'm talking about. And I'll tell you if I don't know as well. I will be completely transparent. Which I think women are a little bit more, what's the word? Not eager, but available to do that. Whereas, and this is nothing against the guys on the call, but I've have more often seen that sort of bluster of, oh, I know what I'm talking about. And you're like, you know, do you really? Because let's just cut to the chase. Because if you don't know, it's okay. You're not a bad person. Let's just do it, right? Whereas I've been more like, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know. And that has always kind of served me into this day, because I work with some extraordinarily smart people. I love the minders that I work with. You know, you look around the room, you hope you're not the smartest person in the room, because if you are, you need to get in a more challenging room for you. So I just really appreciate the input and all stuff. But I think I was lucky in that I had an on-ramp sort of into tech through other things where I was already used to being, you know, a minority of sorts in the room, in the quote unquote room.
I think I kind of want to touch on kind of what Dr. Amanda, Susan, and Rhea kind of said about how it can be lonely being, you know, the only female in the room or in the area. And I kind of have a question also. So again, this may just be because of the company that I was working for. I'm realizing they were kind of horrible. So has anybody ever experienced other women in tech in their job, like kind of gatekeeping a little bit? I've experienced that where I would try to get other female mentors that were kind of higher up in roles and positions. And because they were the only woman in that role, in that position, and it took them so long of clawing to get there, they don't really want to help anybody else out because they're the only one. So they're kind of taking pride in that. And I've had that happen before. So a lot of the mentors that I did have ended up being men because they were the only ones, or some of them were the only ones like kind of willing to kind of help uplift me because they saw how much of a struggle it was, especially with what was going on. So has anybody had that? Because I feel like that also made it feel a lot more lonely because the only other women there that especially are in higher positions are just like, I'm good up here by myself. You can figure it out just like I did. So has anybody, well, I know I've seen the reaction, so I'm assuming yes. How do you kind of overcome that with already being like the only woman in, your area or on your floor or team?
Gosh, I mean, I didn't answer anything about a roadblock because if I did have a roadblock coming up, it was because of myself. And I would say that when I was younger in my career, when I was a project manager, I might have been one of those women like Dion that you just expressed. And it was something that I honestly had to work very hard within myself. I know now as an older woman, I know why I did it then. It was because I was just working so hard to prove myself that like, no, in fact, it's so embarrassing. But at one point as a project manager, I remember having a call with some guy that was now newly reporting to me. And he said something and I said, well, there's a new sheriff in town. And he said, who's that? And I'm like, oh, it's me. And I'm like, it's so awkward and awful to like have said that. But I know that was even as much as I wanted to be someone who would have like never had to quote unquote defend my territory. I know I was that person. So I can say that, yes, I have been it. And yes, I've experienced it, certainly before this company, more so ever than men in my career. And I think it's something, I think it has to do with insecurity, honestly, more than anything. And Susan had said, holding your space, holding your ground, and really like being strong in who you are and what you know, and even what you don't know. And for myself, I've never been the smartest person in the room. I was a very bad coder, so I moved to management instead. Like that's really the story. I used to sit in meetings and have to write down words because I didn't know what they were talking about. And then I would take the notepad out of, and Google thing. Well, this was probably pre-Google, but I would look up things like to see what the topic was even about. So I think that, yeah, I think it's a real thing. And I think it has to do with insecurity. And it's probably, if I had to guess, it's probably women who are, they probably don't, well, I'll speak for myself, don't like being that way, didn't know any other way to be. And it took a lot of internal personal growth and stuff in order to, hopefully I'm not like that anymore because I make a conscientious effort not to be. But yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I don't think I've ever met anybody that's been in that position, that's done it, that's admitted it. So that's appreciated. But I will say you don't do that now. So
okay, good.
So that's totally okay. So we have about 15 minutes left. We do have a lot more talking points, but I'll kind of skip to one of the last ones just because it'll kind of wrap up the talk and then we'll kind of pick up in our next discussion. So in this last one is like, I know that especially in tech, thinking future-wise can be a little daunting, especially for women if you're thinking families and things like that. But where do you all see yourself in the next maybe 5 to 10 years in tech? Do you think you'll still be in tech? Do you think what role do you kind of see yourself in? Do you not want to be coding anymore, moving more into a manager position? Like, where do you all see yourself moving into tech within the next 5 to 10 years?
I can probably answer that because I'm probably closer than most people on this call. So I see myself definitely shifting into more of well, I'm already, in a sense, the director of technology, but shifting even post Mindera into more of a mentoring type thing. And a thing of, if people are interested in tech, kids, whatever, helping, once you've done this for a while, you learn some things. And if you, and I think it's our job really as humans to impart those things one way or another, to put them out there so that someone else can learn from your path. And so I definitely see that happening. What exact form it will take, I'm not sure, but there's just a lot, there's a lot of sort of ground and territory that I've covered, and some wonderful people I've learned from. And you want to be able to make sure that it doesn't stop with you, and that any opportunity that you get, that you pass it on in ways big and small. I know here at Mindera, we've supported, is it Women in Tech Pittsburgh? Is that what it is? I always get the name wrong, but we've done scholarships for some of the women there and things like that. And it's just it feels really good to turn around and gift something that the people have given to you, to kind of pass it on. And so I definitely see that as a responsibility, really. So in the next, in my post Mindera career, I'm sure there'll be a lot of consulting and things like that based on that, especially around Web3 and crypto.
Those are definitely growing. I think for me, I'm kind of already in the process of it, but I have so many different things that I would love to do manager-wise. I'm thinking of, originally I was like, oh, I want to be a Scrum Master. And then I'm like, oh, I want to do project management. And it's like, oh, I want to be a product owner. So I'm still kind of in that realm of all those things. So I'm currently getting my MBA in IT management to at least give me that side of it. So within the next 5 to 10 years, I definitely think I'll be in more of a manager position. I don't know if it's going to be more project manager or a Scrum Master or product. I don't really know yet. I just know that I love facilitating things, and I like making things organized and knowing what's coming next and things like that. So I haven't figured out exactly what I want to do. I know I still want to be in tech. I know I don't want to be a coder anymore, but I'm still trying to figure out those three, and within that avenue, if there's something else that I'm missing in there. So I'm still kind of doing research, figuring things out, but I definitely think I'll be more in a manager position in the next 5 to 10 years.
You'll be good at
Yeah, I
it.
have no interest in leaving coding at all. That's the fun of the job, is getting behind the computers and figuring out the code. So 5 to 10 years, I still want to be coding at some level and doing kind of what I'm doing and inspiring people to write code and, offshoots of what I've written, and go in different directions from code that I inspired, or, solve other problems from it. Just have a lot more background code to explore at that point.
Does anybody else have any plans or aspirations within their career within the next 5 to 10 years they'd like to share?
I think I'm kind of an odd one because I'm not really much of a coder. I'm a dreadful coder when I've tried it, but I think I'd love over the next several years to stay in the operations side of tech. And then I'm super interested in exploring the education side of it too, because I think with everything changing just in the industry of tech and the growth, that will really change the education and what people study to enter into the field. So I'd love to learn more about that as well.
I think I've always been interested a little bit in the education side of it, because I had great teachers when I was in school, and they made it really interesting, even though it wasn't fun. They made it interesting. They made me want to learn it. So I've always been interested in the education side of tech, but I know I go on tangents and I ramble. So I'm not a great teacher, because we'll talk about 10 different things in the span of 2 minutes. But I've always been interested in that. So I think, and I definitely think that will be something good for you to do, because just the way that you speak and you explain things, I think you do it really well. So I definitely can see you doing that.
Oh, thanks, Dion.
Robert said Mindera has a lot of folks with great experience who will be great teachers. I definitely agree.
Yeah, I know that makes Rob happy. Yeah. Yeah.
See, all you gotta do is connect with Rob. Rob will get you right. Okay, so we do have about 10 minutes left. If there isn't anyone else that wants to input, I'll go ahead and open up the floor if anybody has any questions for any of our women minders or our guest, Dr. Amanda. I'll kind of open the floor up for that. And then if not, again, thank you all for joining, and I'll kind of close it out. Paul, raise your hand. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
I don't want to take all the time, but my wife has had a very successful career in education. She's a teacher at Chatham University and teaches future teachers of Pittsburgh. Very successful career. I can't be happier for her. But a career in education is not nearly as lucrative as a career in tech. And she's been looking. She does have summers open when she's not teaching. She's interested, but can anybody relate an experience where you're coming from academia? Maybe you felt secure in academia and you decided to leave and pursue tech.
So I know someone that's done it. I mean, I've never done it, but I know someone that's done it. My cousin was a teacher. She was a high school teacher. And she went into an analyst role because she can decipher things really well. So that's what she ended up doing. She ended up taking a course. I think it was like just one of those like LinkedIn courses or something like that. And she ended up moving into just an analyst position. She's still in that analyst position because she hasn't figured out exactly where she wants to go yet. But I think that could be a good way to kind of get into it, more of like a business analyst if she knows things about business, or just take one of the business courses, or if she's good with like numbers and things like that. I know, well, I won't say a data analyst because it depends on the company and things like that, but that's something. I think an analyst is definitely like the best way to kind of get into that, just from the people that I've known that have done it.
I was actually a classroom teacher for 12 years before I went back full-time into tech. And that's partly because, after my advisor said, you can't do it, I was like, well, if you can't teach. And so I taught and taught and taught. And, I love teaching and I loved inspiring kids and things like that. But it's the same problems, every single year. It's just the different kids. So it wasn't enough that mental shift for me, that I wanted something that was a little bit more challenging like tech could offer.
Amanda, maybe you can tell him a little bit about some of the struggles you had trying to make that career shift, because I think his wife may see some of those as well.
Yeah, it was tough. Whenever you put on your resume that you've been a teacher for 12 years, people automatically, they have 7 seconds on your resume, so they automatically throw it away. So I had a lot of resumes out there that didn't actually mention anything in teaching, because for a lot, it looked better to have a 12-year gap than it did to be a teacher for 12 years. And then, I threw in, had consulting work and things like that. But, as soon as people saw that you were a teacher, it's like, well, you can't you're a teacher. You haven't actually, used a computer, but to complain about putting grades in or something.
That frustrates me, because the best people if someone can teach what they know, wow, that's what you want, is you really know something when you're able to teach it. And I know almost anyone on this call, any of the devs on this call, if you've ever, for example, had to do something as simple as teaching someone how to set up, their key pair set on Bitbucket or something like that, if you really know it, and then you are the best person to teach it. And that frustrates me, that if you don't know it, you teach it. That's bugged me since I was a kid, because it never made sense to me.
I have a quick follow-up question to that, and then Denny had a question in the chat, so I'll mention that. But do you think in your transition that, because I know, so I've heard, especially now kind of doing recruitment is that now they're kind of looking for more of those transferable skills. So do you think that was the case when you were transitioning, that, okay, I have these transferable skills to this role, and, this could also, because I can teach, and, these are things that I've done, that it can help you more with the job? Or do you think that still hinders you with having, those 12 years of teaching?
I think now that I'm in the role, they're pretty excited that I have that ability because I do lots of demos and writing how-tos and things like that. So the developers without any knowledge can pick up our software. But it's something that whenever they're looking for the devs, they don't think about those soft skills or the transferable skills. They're just like, what's the best algorithm to search this, data structure? And they don't think about all the soft skills. And I think that's just probably a different, corporate mantra. Not all companies think about the soft skills as much as they really should. And they focus on when they get 1,000 applicants, which one is the 1% that will do things fastest.
Totally agree. Okay.
That's interesting. I was thinking about not too long ago. Actually, I think I bore from stuff from the client that I was experiencing, but I was thinking about how sometimes you want to key in when you're interviewing, you want to key in on the one big thing. I mean, we all want to, when you're hiring someone, you want someone that's going to increase the work for the company, and it all boils down to dollars. Are we making dollars out of this hire? The word meritocracy gets thrown around sometimes, and to me, that's there's a concept that's like you always want to go there. You sometimes get a situation where there's the short-term loss, long-term gain versus the short-term gain, long-term loss. You always want to go for your long-term gain. And if you've got like 2 developers and one's an A+ programmer and one's an A- programmer, you don't know which one from just that, which one's actually going to bring more work for the company. Because if your A+ is very silo, lone wolf, go out on their own, doesn't talk to people, and your A- is help people, participate in pair programming, mentor juniors, they're raising up the skills of the entire team. Whereas your lone wolf might be refactoring stuff that doesn't need to be refactored, making it more complicated when it's not, should be keep it simple, causing extra, like wasting their time, causing extra time for debugging. So you look at, there's so many different skills that really kind of go into being a good developer on a team. Well beyond just programming. And so that's one of the things we were looking at, because we've seen some people come through that were great programmers, but they didn't really add the value to the team. Whereas we've had other people come through that were good programmers and talk to the teammates, and we're very senior people that could go down and meet with mentor the juniors and stuff. And those are the people that really add a lot of added value that you can't quantitate it. You can't stick a number on it and say, oh yeah, they added, 14% growth in, junior developers or anything, but it's there. And it's a difficult thing. It's part of the difficulty of hiring, is taking in the global picture,
No.
But I ramble a lot, so don't.
No worries. So I do want to go ahead and, since we do have just a couple minutes left, I want to ask Denny's question, which was, has there been a situation where it almost seems like people are being too encouraging because you are a woman in tech? And is there a fine line between supporting women in tech and making sure they are treated the same?
I think, so I'd like to answer that, I think from maybe a different perspective, which is as someone who's hired a lot of women in tech. It's really important, and I think it's something that we do well in the US anyway at Mindera. We don't look at gender. So especially in the recruitment process, it really does come down to, how did they do on the test? How did they do in the technical interview? Are they going to be a cultural fit for the team? And that truly means, like, do we like them? Like, from a cultural standpoint, is this someone who has a lot of ego or no ego, basically? And we try to hire as much as possible for no ego. Probably 99% of the people who make it through the technical interview, we like culturally. Every once in a while, there will be someone that we're like, oof, this person is just not going to work. But in that case, so from that standpoint, trying everybody being hired into the company in a fair and equal way, we're pretty good at that. But then on the other side, Denny, I think there's one thing that we talk about a lot in the ops team, or in the past at least we have, is making sure that all personalities are welcome and all personalities are respected. And what that means is that some people, male or female, are going to need more encouragement than other people. And so I don't know that there's such thing as being too encouraging, there might be such thing as being too focused on people who might have be more vocal than other people. So that's something that, you know, we spend a lot of time on. But for the most part, I think one of the best things about tech is that it is the great equalizer. Like either you can code or you can't code. And that's basic. And if you can't code, your PRs are going to fail and eventually you're going to be written up and you're going to get fired, you know, in roles that are more like Dion's role or like my role. It kind of is the same thing. Either you perform or you don't perform. And there's just, you know, Dion's just, not to pick you out, Dion, but you're in the role you're in because you consistently do a great job. So if Dion was, I'm trying to think of the male version of your name, but that would be the same if Dion was not Dion or, you know, Dale or not, you know. So that's how I would answer that.
And then PD has a, so I'll let you go ahead and answer. We'll ask your question before we wrap up.
No, I was just gonna make another comment coming from education. I will openly admit that I got more pleasure out of seeing female and basically non-white male students in my classes succeed more than the male students, the white male students. I got more pleasure out of that because I wanted to see more equity, but I also was educated that while it's okay to have that, do make sure that you're not showing favoritism. So it kind of goes back. I apologize on who had stated this, but I did catch it that, hey, am I being given this because this is easy for me, or am I or is someone going to give this to me fully fleshed out so that I don't have any hurdles to go through? It's something I've struggled with, you know, since getting into the market, is how to properly, and now I don't really have that issue. Everybody, if I see somebody that I feel is doesn't have a voice, I want to encourage them to have a voice. Whether or not they choose to express that voice, I don't have control over that. The only thing I have is the ability to give that person their voice. They can make that decision. I do not want to force that person to have a voice. So I think that's another thing that, you know, that in order to get to that point, you do have to treat everybody fairly, but that also means that while you might be happy that someone that you feel in your headspace is undervalued, underappreciated, all it takes is just sending them, well, not that all that it takes. It is encouraged to be, hey, you did a really good job, or I'm really appreciative of the work that you put in, but make sure it goes across the board too, because, you know, everybody wants to feel a part of the team. That's what I've tried to do. But yeah, I think there can be a point where you do have to watch how, as I'll just say, as a white male, I interact with females that I work with in the tech. As long as I feel at the end of the day with my integrity, I gave them the exact same encouragement, you know, information that I did everybody else, then it's up to them to prove to me. But them getting to that point, I don't have control over that. But I do appreciate that this company does do a good vetting process. My personal opinion, I would love to see more females in databasing, in some of the other items. However, I also understand that it comes down to those who apply. You know, people come in and they apply. We want more people to apply from all different facets of life. But we still at the end of the day have work to do. We take who comes in that's the best qualified. What do I think? Like I said, I would love to have more database programmers that are female. It doesn't mean that I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah, I think that there's especially kind of piggybacking off that, I think there's a very fine line with a lot of it, especially with one showing favoritism, but always being encouraging to everyone, but still rooting for, people that are undervalued and things like that. I can root for you, but there's a very fine line from rooting from you, but in showing that favoritism to everyone, like to those people. And I think especially with recruitment. So for me personally, I would love to see more minorities in tech. I would love to see that. But although I would love to see that, it also, again, for recruitment, there's a bias I have to make sure that I'm not putting out there. If they apply and I'm like, oh, great, I can root for them. I hope they do well on this interview. But if they don't, then it is what it is. I can't get them the job. So I think there's a very fine line in that, but I'm always going to pick the candidate that performed well in the technical, that's a cultural fit. You know what I mean? So I think definitely I understand what you're saying there, but I definitely think with recruitment, with management, I think especially it's a very fine line that you have to make sure that you don't teeter and you just kind of have to straight line it across.
I think when you root for people, you run into the pitfall of confirmation bias. If you're rooting for somebody and you're not rooting for everybody, then it's confirmation bias. You're looking for them to be good, and you're going to find excuses in your brain for them to be good. And like you could just root for everybody, really. But one thing
we have tests. That's why we have written tests. Like that's why we have both kinds, and because of course, there's always going to be confirmation bias. It's impossible to get away from bias ever. Like we're humans, but I think that's the key.
Yeah.
And then if we're doing our jobs, like, you can quantitatively, it's kind of difficult in some aspects, but for like male versus female, you can quantitatively start looking at it in terms of, hey, how many developers do we have what's the percentage of female? Well, what's the percentage of female that we interviewed? And what's the percentage of females that we got in applications? They should be pretty much the same. If you're doing your job and getting the best, being unbiased and stuff, or being, the whole idea of, hey, we want to go for like a 50-50 mix. You shouldn't necessarily have a 50-50 mix. You should have the same percentage of female engineers as you have interviewed and as you have applications for. And if you have anything different in a bigger company, especially, smaller numbers, you're going to get things off. If you have anything different, you might be doing something wrong. But I think it's important to try and figure that out, because you could figure out that, hey, we're getting 30% female applications, but only interviewing 15%. Why is that? Because once you have those numbers, you can start to look and find out, do we have a breakdown somewhere where our applications aren't then being transferred into interviews, because it should statistically move on to the interview process. And then, or are we not getting enough applications? What can we do to go out there and find these people to get them to apply to our jobs? Maybe how we're recruiting it needs to change. Unfortunately, that can be harder when you're looking at like minority hiring and things like that, because you can't go, okay, let's write the minority down on everybody's application. And you get in trouble. So that's just an unfortunate business of corporations having to protect themselves these days. But to me, those are all really good information. And I hate it when people start just going, well, we need to get like 50-50 male female. Well, no, we need to figure out why more females aren't getting into the business, aren't getting into tech, and try and correct that problem, because that's where the big problem is.
Well, I think what you shared, Dan, is absolutely right. And our recruitment is really data driven. So we do look at all of those things. And to your last point about figuring out why, that's why, is Rob still here? Yeah, educating people to come in. But yeah, there's always more that can be done. Part of the reason we're doing this roundtable today is to, we're going to post this on social media after it's edited a bit, I think probably for length or a couple, but we want to encourage other women who are thinking, oh, well, maybe I don't have the right background, or, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm coming from education, or gosh, I have to, you know, I have young kids at home and I'm their primary caregiver. We wanted to share this to show that there's all different types of women working in tech, people who love to code, people who stink at coding, and people who are right in between. There's lots of roles. And it is a question of, we really are, if anything, since it is all women recruiters in the US company anyway, we might be biased more towards women, and yet we do have a rather small majority or minority of women in the company. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the next step, is to just encourage the women that we know they're out there. We'd love for you to join us, and you know, they all are welcome at the table as long as you can code. I mean, that's basically it. That's where the cookie crumbles.
So I know we went over a little bit. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll just add in for Dan's thing that he said, you know, that's not just an important thing about education with Mindera. That goes back to first, second, third grade, where, you know, we've had our daughter told that, oh, well, you're a girl, you don't really need to know math as well. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, like these very formative experiences that people have in education is super important as to where we end up going in our life. And so we have to be aware of it at every level of education.
Okay. I definitely think that, okay, this is gonna be my last final thought because we've completely over time, but I definitely think that, especially growing up, people give you or kind of tidbit these preconceived notions or these things, and they kind of sprinkle them in as you're growing up, and you don't realize how much they kind of like start to affect you if you don't have anybody to like, hey, know that like you can do math. Because I was one of those people, like I didn't think I was good at math, but then when I was in computer science, I found out I love calculus, and I went all the way up to Calc 3. But I thought algebra was the hardest thing in the world. But I got to calculus and Calc 1 and 2, and I was just like, I actually love this. So what am I doing? So I definitely think that it's important to not only just encourage people, especially younger kids and people that are in like middle school and high school, and not necessarily trying to drive the way that what career they're doing, but still just encouraging them to whatever it is that they want to do, and letting them know that you can literally do whatever you want. Like the world is huge. There's a lot of careers, especially in tech. So those are my last final thoughts. If anybody else has anything really quick, I will go ahead and say that before we wrap up. No? Okay. Well, thank you all for joining. This was a very engaging conversation. I really appreciate it. We will be having our second table talk or round table on March 15th. Still going to be around women in tech. It's going to be a couple of different questions though, to kind of tailor it to something else, to a different avenue of women in tech. But I do appreciate you all coming. Thank you. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.